Alright, so for A6.2, let's see, we got a little bit of rational expressions. So we're looking at anything that has a square root. So first thing we need to look at, the square root of 12. Is there any number in the square root of 12, any factors of the square root of 12 that can actually be square rooted? So I can rewrite the square root of 12 as 3 times 4 underneath the square root. And this other term, I have 3. We're just going to leave that 3 alone for a second. And square root of 27. Any numbers, any factors of 27 that can be square rooted? Well, 9 is one of them. So what is 3 times 9, right? Okay, so this is the same thing as rewriting it as 3 times the square root of 4 plus 3 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 9. These two expressions, these two things, are 100% identical. There is no difference between these two expressions. They are the same, because I can rearrange them. Alright? So I can think about this as being the square root of 3. And what is the square root of 4? Well, that's just 2. And I can think about this as being 3 times, well, what's the square root of 9? That's another 3, right? And times the square root of 3. So what am I left with? I got 2 on this, 2 square root of 3 plus 9 square root of 3. Well, what do I see here? I see 2 square root of 3, so we can think about those as being like terms. So since those are like terms, we can simply add the two numbers together. So my final answer is 11 on the square root of 3. So that is answer choice B. Alright, same way here. If I'm looking at the square root of x to the 15th. Well, if anytime you have an x, any number that is a whole number, so I can think about this as being the square root of x and the square root of x to the 14th. These two expressions are equal. They are equal to each other. There's no difference between those two. So I also have the square, and that I can think about as being the square root of x and the square root of x squared. And I can also think about this as being as x to the 7th as being the square root of x and x to the 6th. Well, the square root of 14, that's just so I can square root that. So we have x to the 7th on the square root of x. I also have x, so it's the second term, and the third term I have x to the 3rd square root of x. Alright, and just like you would here on any expression, so now I see like term, like term, like term, so I can multiply my exponents. So when we multiply an exponent, so I have x to the 7th times x to the 3rd, all on the square root of x, right? So I can pull that out. Well, what do we do when we multiply exponents? We simply add 7 plus 3 plus 1 is x to the 11th square root of x, and there is a little typo. The answer choice is B, and that should be 11, not 12. So there's a little typo on your paper. Alright, so here we're going to be doing basically the same thing. We're looking at how do we simplify this down. So we're going to take 2. Well, what is the square root of x cubed? It's the same thing as writing the square root of x squared and x, right? All over x. We're going to leave the plus square root of x and the minus 6 square root of x. So here now I just have 2. Well, what is x square root of x squared? Is just x. And I'm left with square root of x over x plus square root of x minus 6 square root of x. And what happens here? What do we see? X and x, so those can go away. And we cancel out the divide out. So I am left with 2 square root of x plus square root of x minus 6 square root of x. So now we can think about these all as being like terms, so I can add and subtract. So all we're doing is just adding our numbers. 2, there's a 1 here, right? Imaginary 1, and a negative 6. Well, what's 2 plus 1 minus 6? It's just negative 3 square root of x. So the answer choice is D.